Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being patient through the technical manipulations here trying to get one of these wireless mice working. I'm glad you all could make it in this afternoon for our presentation with Dr. Simons from our For All the People exhibit, which is downstairs in the North Lobby. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at it yet, please do. Dr. Simons today is going to be talking to us about the HIV crisis in America, the long road to action. And before I forget, I would like to give you your certificate.
Very nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you for presenting the series. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. So where? Okay. So third time's a charm. So
Yes.
Okay. So I'm Dr. Sheila Simons. I know many of you, actually. Thank you for coming. This was a tough one because there's so much content on HIV and everything that's happened. So I'm going to try and hit a little bit of everything in it. Some of the new treatments that exist, some of the new prevention tools that we have. I did have a bag of condoms, and both receptive and insertive, and I'm out of them now. I was on the quad earlier, so that's how that happened. But I practically mugged for them. Let's first talk a little bit about a couple different types of terms. Some of you are familiar with this and are aware of them, but when we talk about HIV, we're talking about specifically the virus, the Human Immunodeficiency Virus, or again, HIV. The acquired immune deficiency virus received its name kind of in, well, we'll actually cover that in a moment, because at one point it was called GRID. And we got away from using that. It was kind of a pretty offensive term at the time. And we also said, hey, there's other people that get HIV. It's not just a small group of individuals. Building on that, I'll talk a little bit here, and then in the end we'll come back to it. But when you look at HIV, we're talking really about 3 stages. People do not die from HIV. What they die from is the opportunistic infections associated with HIV once their immune system starts to fail. We have had some pretty cool things that have happened, though, not just in treatment-wise, but how we diagnose people with AIDS now. When you look at the acute infection, you usually have flu-like symptoms. Those symptoms will go away, and then you will develop eventually the second stage, when you start to show signs and symptoms consistently. We'll talk about those too at some point. And then finally, we used to define AIDS as an individual is diagnosed with them when they had an opportunistic infection, which was okay, but that meant you could be really sick and we can be giving you treatments, but we weren't, because we didn't think that you had any need to use them, because you didn't have an opportunistic infection. You didn't have an infection that took the opportunity to take advantage of your immune system failing. That changed. And then this was introduced, so now people who have a CD4 cell count of 200 and below, normal is 500 to 1500. But if you had a cell count 200 and below, what we realized is people could really benefit from treatment at that time. That actually was an insurance industry change, which is remarkable, but there were enough groups that lobbied the insurance industry and got that introduced. Yeah, so that's kind of exciting that that happened. Okay. So the first confirmed case of HIV, do you know where it was? It wasn't in the United States. No. Democratic Republic of Congo is when that happened. We do have something from the 40s that hasn't been quite confirmed, but the first case in the Midwest was in St. Louis, and that was Robert Rayford. Robert Rayford was 16 years old in 1969 is when he died. We don't know if he contracted the HIV as a result of being a sex worker, or if there were other implications involved, like a sexual assault or sexual abuse. We don't know that. His photo has never been found. His family has protected him, and they've also protected where he's been buried. In '81, the Centers for Disease Control actually announced that there was a new and a distinct condition, and 2 of those distinct conditions were Kaposi sarcoma, often called KS, and then PCP, which is pneumocystis carinii pneumonia. at that time, and as we start to travel throughout this timeline a little bit, we see that individuals that once they get pneumonia, that PCP, once they get to that stage, that they will probably have that 3 times and then they're out, is how we always explain that. So they'd have the infection once, a second time. If they got it a third time, they probably would not survive it. So, and then we saw in our very first mainstream article in the media, showed up in the New York Times, and this is when the CDC is just starting to release some information. And as they're starting to release it, New York Times discusses the rare cancer seen in 41 homosexuals, and specifically talking about New York and California. Later we start talking about Florida and some other places as well. Okay. But this is where it really started to make a big difference and where the citizen action came into play. In '82, we had some community-based organizations. 3 organizations in particular were instrumental in getting the message out as to what HIV was, or what we thought it was. It was called the gay plague for a while. And as they started to get that message out, we started to gather individuals for protest. And those individuals were making some headway. Most of that happened in San Francisco and in New York City. New York City eventually will create a group that many of us are familiar with today, or maybe you've seen it, the ACT UP, and they were very successful. Most of the stuff that they did prior to '82 was education on hepatitis prevention. And they did it for hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and they talked about hepatitis testing. So they already had a nice skeleton of organization for them to start getting messages out. So that was really important at the time. In 1982, it was announced they were now calling it GRID. Have you ever heard GRID? Yeah, this is awful, the acronym that they use. Gay-related immune disease is what they called it at the time. Yeah, so gay-related immune disease. And eventually what came of that is we moved towards calling it acquired immune disease. Yeah. In 1982, major newspapers were publishing that you were at risk if you belonged to the 4-H club. And the 4-H club meant that you are either a hemophiliac, you were a homosexual man, you were a heroin user, or Haitian. Those were our groups at the time. Yeah, the Haitians. When the Haitians showed up, that's when we first started realizing that it was in a population of individuals that, one, were at risk. They were men and women that were infected, and that really kind of raised some alarm bells for us, because now we're thinking, oh, it's not just in gay men, it's not just in hemophiliacs and people getting blood products. It's got to be something more than that. And it took some time to discover what HIV was and what was really happening. We actually eventually have a discovery for that. But here's one of the things that we started. Let me go back just one. Yeah, be sure I'm on right. In '82, there is a press conference that happens. And I don't know if anyone would remember this press conference or not. Okay, 3 of us, right? 3 of us remember.
I vaguely remember.
Do you remember this? Yeah, so I'm going to play a little bit of a clip of that. And it'll probably, of course, start over, so we'll have to get past the, we'll have to get past the video. And this was, I might need a little assistance with this, Stacy.
Okay.
Oh, here comes some volume.
Okay, good deal. I'm not sure if the same thing that took out the microphone took out that or not.
Maybe really hard to hear, folks. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I should have asked to cut video. I should have done. I didn't think about it. What's that? Yeah, it's not the way up on those slides. I think the amplifier might have just cracked up. It's not.
You can see at the bottom of this, yeah, the subtitles for it. So, but the press secretary at the time is saying that, do you have grid, do you have the gay plague? No, I don't have the gay plague. This is a press conference at the White House. That's okay. There is a second, the journalist Lester, I don't know his last name, but there is a section a little bit further on this, and I'll send this link so you can watch that. But he's pretty much asking, you know, has the president been informed? What is the president going to do about it? And as the video will move on to the second section, he says the word ferry. And then Lester asked a question about that, and he said, Lester is interested in ferries, and everyone laughs. So yeah, it's, and of course he's retracting it because he said, I love you, and he's like, I hope you don't, as that's happening. It's a terrifying video, really. This is the second part of it, and we get into 83, but I'll show you evolution with the maps. I'm like, oh, now there's sound. Yes, I can hear the sound, you cannot. Let's see if we can do that real quick with the subtitles. Oh, a fairy tale is what it turns into. So they're trying to figure out how much funding that the government is giving at this time. This is under Ronald Reagan's administration, and they are not receptive to the treatment or the prevention of HIV at the time. And as he is asking him about this conference, and what they're now referring to as the AIDS problem, which is better in the beginning, they were referring to it as AIDS, but also calling it the gay plague. The gay plague actually came from a televangelist who said that the gay plague is sweeping the nation. They do talk about the CDC. At the time, though, of the CDC, I'm going to get out of this, $12 million for research on HIV. Now, $12 million, folks. I think we know how far that'll get us in research of a disease we don't understand, not very far. But it became known as AIDSgate because during this time, the number of people that were dying, and I'll do a spot map progression for you here in a second, and you can see the cases as they build. You give me a remote, and then I leave it here. Thank you. I'm unappreciative.
Yeah, I can't get working sound, so it's a give and take.
Okay, all right. I appreciate that relationship. So in 87, we have the AIDS quilt. How many of you have seen it? Yeah. It's actually, I think, in Lake Forest right now. Yeah, so I can hear the video playing in the background. It's like the story of my life, like all these tabs are open, I have video playing, I don't know where it's coming from. People are yelling at me, push that button. So the AIDS quilt is known as the largest piece of folk art in the world. Each panel is, I believe, 6 by 8. And then they have a traveling show, but it is in Illinois right now. But this was a big one for us. I'm curious how many of you on the end here know who this is. Do you know who that is? It's Princess Diana, yeah. And this was an intentional photo op, and it was amazing because when it happened, it was like, oh, finally, you know, that we have some support here. She's shaking hands and meant to do so for the press. She's in a hospital, and this person has HIV. And she's beginning her campaign of holding babies, touching people, holding people, and it's changing how people are seeing others as HIV positive. She was just one person who did that during the time. There were 2 other people, and then another that was added to that. Michael Jackson was very active and worked with Ryan White. We also had Elton John, who was involved in this process and still. But there was one other person, and maybe you remember her. Friend of Elton John, actress. It was kind of a surprise. People were like, wow. Elizabeth Taylor. Yeah. Elizabeth Taylor was a huge helper for this. But it wasn't until Rock Hudson died that it got the attention of the administration. Then the administration was like, we really need to do something. Ronald Reagan, who is a former actor, worked with Rock Hudson. So it touched close to home. And it's unfortunate that many times that's what it takes in order to get something like this to kind of move forward. And then we have Larry Kramer. The silence equals death with the pink triangle. He's still alive today. I think he got married in 2016. And he's 84, I say he's 84, like I know his birthday and everything. You know, Larry and I, we go back. But he actually created the AIDS Coalition. He was one of the founding members on it. He is a playwright from New York and created this front of protest, but their targets were not the little fish. You know, they're doing the big fish. They're going to the White House, the protests. They were at Trump Towers protesting for housing because we had a difficult time getting housing for individuals. Individuals that were HIV positive or thought to be HIV positive, looked like they had HIV, were denied housing, were fired from their jobs. They lost a lot of their rights until we understood more. I remember watching on the evening news Peter Jennings talking about in Colorado there was a person who was HIV positive that was in a car accident and they called the hazmat squad. They didn't know what to do with them. Now yesterday in our department we had a career fair. Did you guys go to the career fair? Yeah. So Adam Kars was there, former student of mine. He's an epidemiologist at Riley Children's Hospital in Indianapolis. That's where Ryan White went for his treatment. He's from Kokomo, Indiana. We'll talk a little more about him in a second. And there were a lot of fluids, bodily fluids. People didn't know what to do with them. A physician who worked there at the time said, I'll take them. Took them all to his farm outside of Indianapolis, dug a giant hole, buried them all, poured a bunch of bleach in it, and called it done. We just didn't know what to do with the fluids. So called it done, and then he eventually, returned to doing quite a bit of research, especially pediatric research in HIV. Really remarkable at the time. So this particular, they were really known as a group. Some people called them terrorists. I do like to point out, though, I think this goes for everything, right, is that one person's freedom fighter is another person's terrorist. And they targeted big businesses. They targeted the FDA. They protested them, and they pushed the FDA enough, and also pushed at the same time a message of prevention through condoms and monogamy and education. The gay male population at this time really created the foundation for prevention as we know it today. I mean, they were really on the forefront. But he, kind of amazing. And it's just some of their stuff that they had. They want the FDA to create drugs at this time. The FDA is like, okay, we'll research them, but nothing's on the fast track. People are dying. We need to get this on the fast track. So they were involved in that. They had the Campaign 92, AIDS, Vote If Your Life Depends on It. Lots of die-ins. Their die-ins were amazing. I mean, literally thousands of people to show up at the FDA and just lie down in front of the building. And they did the same at the White House and other places. And by doing that, by having that group front, they changed how we look at HIV. They changed how we treat HIV. They created prevention. I mean, it's remarkable what they were able to do. Okay, so this, that's the screen. Can I get the light real quick?
Sure, brass switch on the wall right behind you there.
Oh. The thing with the light switch. That's it. Okay, so these maps, they're called dot maps or spot maps. My EPI students know this. Yeah, rock on. And each dot here actually is going to represent 50 cases. And we'll start with 1983, and I'll kind of add some things in here as we go. So you'll notice out east, we have some cases. I have a couple of spots here, some spots in California, okay? And here we go. So in 1985, these maps are done by the CDC every 2 years, okay? So these are cumulative. We jumped to 23,000 in just 2 years. And then you can see as the dots start to build, 71,000 in 4 years. During this time in 87, right now we're saying we have a medication. So we have a total of 71,000 people that have died, but now we have Combivir, which is a new medication. People were going from using medications that could be maybe 7 to 8 medications a day. The medications that we have now are 1-a-day medications. CDC even has an app that's called One Dose Daily, and as you can click on that, you can add all of your information to it. You can put blood work in there if necessary, so they have some really good things. So we go back. In '89, we're at 150,000. And you can see as we're just kind of filling in there. This is big. How many remember him? He'd be 48 years old today. That's remarkable. I had not realized that until I started to think about it. I was like, wow, he really. So Ryan White really became the face of HIV for individuals who were HIV positive but had contracted it as a hemophiliac. He got it from blood products. The blood banks at this time are not testing blood products. They're not testing blood products because, unfortunately, one of the things that frequently happens in public health is we need numbers. Unless we're seeing a large number of people who are actually impacted by that, it's probably not a prevention program we want to spend a lot of time on. We can spend our money elsewhere. So it's really unfortunate that that's how it works, but it frequently does. We have to determine where we can do our best work. So, but he's also, as he comes out HIV positive, his school won't let him come back to school. So they kick him out. He's from Kokomo, Indiana. They kick him out and he becomes the face of the HIV kind of campaign. Blood banks still not testing. They get there though. How do they get there? They get there with protests. They get there with citizen action. So it took the efforts again of people who were not medical providers. Yes, they were involved in it, but citizens who knew that their life was at risk. Okay. We have, as a result, in 1990, the Ryan White Comprehensive AIDS Resources Emergency Care Act, or the CARE Act. It provides care to individuals who cannot afford it. And it's primary care, but it also offers medications and other types of services. So if you're uninsured or underinsured, you can get care through this act. So pretty cool. We go back to 91. A little frightening. 93. Still not a huge, we have some effort from the government, not a huge effort from the government. We see a lot of action groups that are still working in here, but this is really powerful. How many of you have seen this photo before? Yeah. So in 1993, the San Francisco Gay Men's Course took this photo. Everyone in black represents somebody that was in the course that died from HIV. Yeah. The people in white are the individuals that are still surviving, but today, all of them have died from HIV, and there's a list of 47 others. The course still functions today, and it's remarkable. YouTube them if you haven't. It's pretty amazing. Okay. So, but we do know the obituary list is now 47 names longer, but that photo has just reappeared. They just started reintroducing it. I haven't seen it in a very long time. And then 95, again, we're building on those cases. 97, 99, look how their number right now, we're at 754,000. And then we're going to get really close here. 2003, 2005, 2007, we're over 1 million cases. And again, each dot represents 50 cases. 2009, and then we're starting to look at some other statistics. So that's kind of how things went with the number of cases in the United States. Now, globally, how many cases do we have globally in 2017? And it's tough to get global statistics. And we're always a little bit behind in the collection of these statistics. The reason why it's tough with HIV is that when people become infected with it, they might not know that they have it for, on average, 11 years. Which means they've been exposed to the virus, potentially giving it to others, and then not have any signs or symptoms for 11 years. And again, that's on average. So they would function just normally. What we have seen is there is a decrease in the numbers, and we have seen a decrease in the numbers in the United States as well. Our numbers are improving, and again, it has 100% everything to do with the initial citizen action that came out of this. 100%. Yes, there's medications. Yes, there's education and prevention programs, but those are all built on the shoulders of those individuals. You know, for us today to be able to give the information that we do, A couple of weeks ago, I was at Pride doing an inclusive sex education program for them, and somebody asked me, do you think that there will be an HIV vaccine? Had you asked me that 15 years ago, I'd say, no, I don't see it happening. Do I see it happening within the next decade? I'm hopeful. I've never really felt that way, and with the new medications, I was hopeful to begin with. I was like, guys, we got it, there's something here. But the idea that we could have a vaccine in 10 years, for me, is possible. I don't know. I don't know if it'll happen or not, but I'm hopeful. Okay. So we've had it, you see everywhere there's been a decrease, but look, East Europe and Central Asia, that's a 29% increase. Why do you think that is? Part of it is surveillance, yeah. Yeah. Part of it is surveillance. We're testing people more. We're asking more questions. For the most part, people are a little more comfortable with it. In fact, what is this, Jonathan Van Ness, is it, from Queer Eye?
Yeah.
Who's straight? Is that? I've never seen the show. I'm really bad about that.
Either.
Yeah. And he's HIV positive. He just came forward and said, I'm HIV positive, and that changes things. When you have someone that comes forward, Magic Johnson came forward. Remember what year that was? No, you don't. You guys remember what year that was? Anyway.
I don't think I was born.
Yeah, it was in the early 90s. Yeah. And I remember it was in 92. It was in 92, and I remember being in the hallway in Lance and hearing that come through. It was like, wow, this is going to change things for us. It's going to make a difference for us. And why is this? Because he's an athlete, he's famous, and quite frankly, sometimes we need those individuals to support us in these processes. That's how it works. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Dr. Simon.
Sheila. Yeah.
Sheila, and if you might be able to explain a little bit more about what you meant by surveillance in Central Eastern Europe and Central Asia. And my assumption is, because those are authoritarian states, they're monitoring their populations more closely.
Yes.
And that's why you see numbers that are larger.
Yeah, and in those particular instances, we can see individuals being tested, whether they want to or not. And testing now is so much easier than it was before. Testing used to be you'd give a blood sample, you'd have to wait 2 weeks, you might have a false positive, you might have to, so there's like all of these circumstances that fell into that. Now we can get results in 20 minutes, and it's much more portable. We can do a finger stick now. In the past, we used to do an oral swab, and before that, it was a blood draw. Both the finger stick and the oral swab, it's called OraSure, works really well because it, again, very portable. They used to come and do in the spring, Delta Sigma Theta, which is a sorority here on campus, used to do testing, free testing. They'd bring a group in and they would offer that. So that's the type of surveillance that we're talking about. And of course, surveillance is also gumshoe stuff, right? Going door to door. Do any of your, and then recording that. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So the UN AIDS, the United Nations AIDS program that they have has released, based upon, again, a lot of these building blocks, things that we should all do to prevent HIV. First of all, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention does recommend that everyone in their lifetime is tested for HIV. You can get tested for free if you can't afford it at our local public health department, and that is just a finger stick. Of course, the treat all, the end mother-to-child transmission, the ending discrimination and increasing financing is really the thing, because there is still a giant stigma around individuals who are HIV positive. We do have a couple new tools that have come out, the pre-exposure prophylaxis, or what we call PrEP. Some of you may have heard of that. And then we have the post-exposure prophylaxis, and I'll talk both about those in just a moment. We do find that individuals that do test positive for other types of STIs are also very likely to test positive or be at very high risk for receiving or contracting HIV. And of course, condoms, we have male condoms and female condoms. We do call them receptive condoms, and we call them insertive condoms. So insertive condoms are what the male condoms are. Receptive is for vaginal intercourse, but it can also be for anal intercourse. Okay. They have done one other thing while I'm thinking about it. We recommend that individuals, and we've seen quite a bit occur in Africa alone, this is how they've been able to control some of their numbers, is not just treatment options, but we've also been able to encourage people to receive circumcisions. The scar tissue that develops around the glans penis, I got that? I got it. Sorry to blind everyone. You all look like moles, all squinty-eyed. But we find that through circumcision, the scar tissue that develops around the glands of the penis helps to protect against tears, small tears that might occur in the penile tissue. Thus, it reduces the risk of transmission. Yeah. Okay. So on to prevent. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay. Thanks. So PrEP is kind of the, this is another program that I have done here on campus. We've done it for both medical providers, and I work with the hospital on some of this. Dr. Hillier, who just left, worked on the same grant with me, and then we also worked with the campus providers and the community to offer different educational programs. So PrEP is pretty remarkable. That is the pre-exposure prophylaxis. It's known as Truvada is the brand name for it. They just released, the company, a brand new drug called Descovy. That was released, I think, yesterday. So yeah, when I say just, I mean just, yeah, it's starting, it's showing up on formularies now. That means that Truvada will probably become generic, which is very encouraging because right now it costs about $2,000 a month. Okay, before, yeah, let me reel you back in. With the Truvada costing that much, Gilead, who is the manufacturer of the drug, has offers grants to cover it. In England, you can get Truvada for $22 a month.
Wow.
Yeah. Who's moving? Yeah, $22 a month. Even though it's $2,000 a month here, we do have grants both through the state of Illinois and through Gilead that offer that medication for free. We do have students that I talk to on occasion about PrEP. Coles County is known as a HIV hotspot. We have had, we've had 4 people, I believe is what it was. I have some other stats for you here I'll pull up in a moment, who tested positive for HIV. And what we want to do is be sure that we can treat individuals, offer them something preventive outside of just condoms. The efficacy and how efficient and effective this medication works in preventing HIV is really remarkable. So we do have it set up, you take 1 pill a day. We want to be sure that if people are going to take it, that they're taking it because they can commit to it. There are people that will be like, I don't know, I don't want it. You will have symptoms for about a month, they'll go away. There's something else is going to happen. And that's a huge impact on public health, and it could really have a major impact on HIV. Okay. All right, so where are our cases? 13 to 24 is where we see that our cases, 13 years old. 25 to 34 is our biggest. And then everybody always thinks, why is 65 in there? Well, there's lots of risk factors, folks. There's lots of them.
Is the 13 to 24, oh, no, this is new HIV. Like when they're born with it? Like,
oh, when they're born with it?
fast?
Yeah, that's different. And actually what we have found is that using a specific cocktail of treatments, if we know that the mother is HIV positive and we start therapy at that time, antiviral therapy or retroviral therapy as we call it, we can actually prevent it from being transferred to the infant.
Why do they not test all pregnant women then?
It's state policy, yeah. It's just state policy.
So you have to request it? Like,
You have to request it, and some physicians just do it. I know some physicians that do.
okay.
And they're like, this is the panel that we do, and it's cheap in comparison to a lot of the other things. It's cheap. But what we do, we spend an incredible amount of time focusing on prevention and behaviors and not humans.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what makes the difference there. And in my field, when you're in like public health, community health, health promotion, You know, we're kind of seen as the warriors against pleasure, are we not? I mean, don't drink, don't smoke, don't do this, don't do that, you know, and it doesn't make us really popular. But it also hopefully gets a message across, and we need to focus more again on individuals as humans rather than on individuals as your behavior. You're a male that has sex with men. You know, it's not just that, it's lots of other things.
I thought you weren't popular just because you're so terribly grumpy.
I'm sorry?
I'm
I'm grumpy?
because you're grumpy.
I am, totally. Look at me. Yeah. So this is what's a worry, right? So let's look at 25 to 34, but look at our increase in STIs.
Whoa.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the other thing we're really concerned about. These numbers go up, HIV goes up.
Yeah.
Okay, why are people not using condoms anymore?
I think it's more just a trend. Like
I
people,
think it feels
people
better.
don't like them anymore.
Yeah, it feels better. You think it's a little bit of a trend? What about they don't remember what this is? Like, think of vaccines. People are like, whoa, measles,
I think it's
smallpox, all of that other stuff. We don't see that anymore.
polio.
Polio. They're all making a comeback.
Because people don't think it's required.
Well, they don't think it's required, but the bigger thing is that they don't quite understand the process. You know, that we use different processes to protect the public. For vaccines, we rely on the concept of herd immunity. You know, the more people we can vaccinate in the herd, the more protection we can provide. But with a lot of other stuff, people are like, well, haven't seen an HIV case, don't know anyone HIV positive, don't this, don't that. It's not going to be me. So, yeah. Those four individuals in Coles County were students.
At Easter?
They're students. Okay. HIV diagnosis, this is from the Atlas Plus. I love the Atlas Plus from CDC. My MP students, get on there and check that out. You can like whittle it right down to all sorts of things and it'll give you trends. And then my geeky librarian friends, you'll love it too. It's great. I know you've probably already been on it, have you? Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's great. And it'll give us like trends for diagnosis of the previous year. All right, and this is troubling. Of course, gonorrhea is going up, chlamydia up, syphilis up. Yeah, hepatitis up. Hepatitis, by the way, is fecal oral. That's how people get it.
Don't wash their hands.
You got it. Yeah.
Nasty.
Yeah. Hepatitis is up here, but it's going down. We see hepatitis C is going up. That's mostly because of baby boomers. We're finding that a lot of them are getting tested now because they were probably exposed to some not so great practices to protect them against hepatitis C. And there are treatments for that. But here's the scary thing about all of this as we see these trends go up. Gonorrhea and syphilis each have, oh, and chlamydia does now too, all three of those do, an antibiotic resistant strain.
Oh.
Yeah, that takes my breath away. That does take my breath away, which means the treatment options are very limited. We have done an excellent job in many ways developing a lot of different medications for individuals. Where we have failed is that we stopped years ago manufacturing new antibiotics. And that, of course, is specifically for the diseases here that I'm speaking of. It doesn't work, obviously, for HIV. What we have done, though, is we've developed more cholesterol drugs, more heart drugs. Those drugs will still work 50, 60 years down the road. The antibiotics won't. Yeah, so if you're the type of person who has, like, the hand sanitizer in your bag, don't admit it. Don't do it. Don't admit it to me. That is paranoia in a bottle. We're killing good bacteria that keeps the good stuff in check. So be careful with that. If it's the only thing you have, slather up. Knock yourself out, slather yourself up, okay? But this gives us an idea of the burden, right, where we are. For every 100,000 people in Illinois, we're about 10.4 of those has an STI. Yeah.
For every how many?
100,000. Yeah. But look at the range in the dark purple, 40.2. So what we know in these states is that there is an enormous economic disadvantage. to access to health care. And so these are red flags. When they start going up again, we know that there's going to have to be, this is when I see things or opportunities for those second citizen action revolutions, those second opportunities for people. It's, I have found that with HIV and the work that I've done with it, and just talking about other STIs and other stuff, is we can't take our foot off the gas. We just cannot. So this is the profile of what we know. This was in 2017. These numbers are the numbers that they have, but it's, again, sometimes it's tough if you don't have the actual testing for it. We're talking about, where are the majority of the cases, and we're looking again at behaviors. 66% were among gay and bisexual men. Okay. But our highest risk group is black male-to-male sexual contact. And part of that is because there is an incredible secrecy that surrounds individuals that don't want to talk about not just HIV, but any type of relationship, sexual relationship in particular, that someone might have. So it can be difficult to kind of navigate that stuff. Look at the white women heterosexual contact, 999. I work with a provider that worked in Cook County, and when he worked in Cook County, he saw an enormous number of women that were coming into his practice that were HIV positive. It was just an explosion. Like, where is this new epidemic coming from? They were partners of individuals in Cook County Jail, and that's how they were becoming infected. So then we learned that there has to be other things that we need to focus on. And you can see why now when I say we can't take our foot off the gas. Okay? So, but here's the other scary thing. About 30% of these that we have, of the new diagnosed, people don't know they have it. They just don't. Our new HIV infections are transmitted by people who are living undiagnosed. So that's scary, 1 in 7 people not knowing that they are HIV positive. Okay? So, some things that I just want to readdress or follow over. We're looking at people living with HIV. We've seen the rates fallen. Decreased condom use, that's our thing. Good thing I was handing out condoms on the quad today, library quad. We are seeing an increase in people who inject drugs, and then we have a lot of barriers still for people that are trying to seek care. So I'm going to kind of go through this because I've been here for an hour already. Time flies when you're having fun, right? So, yeah, okay. So I want to talk a little more about PrEP because that's kind of the other thing that I do here with HIV. Truvada is the medication that I do talk about here. And what we do know with Truvada is it is a medication that if you are at risk and you are maybe not in a monogamous relationship, or you're what we call a discordant couple, meaning one of you are HIV positive. So we know that if an individual can take this medication, the Truvada, once a day, they can take it for as long as they like, and they can stop it. I like to compare Truvada, even though it's not what it is, but I like to compare it to birth control. When you're in a relationship and you're ready, you can stop taking it. Truvada can also be taken as a post-exposure. So if you've been exposed, you think you've been exposed to HIV, if you get this medication within 72 hours, you take it once a day for 28 days, it will prevent the transmission. These medications have been showing over 90% and in some cases 98% effectiveness. Yeah, and it's super exciting for you. In fact, I just got goosebumps, or as I call them, my hackles went up. Yeah, so it's exciting to me to think that, yeah, we have potential here. We have a lot of potential.
So how is it being exposed? Like you said, all these heterosexual women came into that doctor, but because they were partners with jail, how are they getting exposed?
Yeah.
And if it's not,
Yeah, so part of it is men who have sex with men in prison. Mm-hmm. It's also injection drug users. And then as their partners visited them or as they got out of jail,
so how
they would pass that on. I'm sorry?
How is it being spread? Like, bodily fluids?
Yeah, bodily fluids. Okay. Yeah, so how it's spread is through vaginal secretions, cervical secretions, rectal fluid, semen. We have had cases of breast milk. We have had that happen. Yeah, we have had that happen. But again, I'm sorry? Injection. I'm like, what, did I touch something? Yeah, and injection drug users are I was just up in Chicago I go, okay, I wasn't just up there, it was August. Just realized it's October. The other day, 1969. But when I was up there, I took my kit, my Narcan kit, because the year before, I was up at the same hotel, and there was somebody that was overdosed on heroin outside of the hotel.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I thought maybe I'll take my kit this time, so it's common.
Did you get to use it?
I did not, and I'm thankful.
That's good.
Yeah. Okay. Did I have chemsex up there? We'll get that in a moment. So here's the thing with Truvada. It is a tool. It is not for actual, it doesn't protect 100%. We say that with everything. We never say safe sex. We always say safer sex. And that's really key here. But we have individuals visit a physician. Once you visit the physician, you get a prescription for 3 months. If you have difficulty paying for it, again, see me, go to public health department. The pharmacy at Carle Hospital at the main campus in Champaign, I guess, or Urbana. They have a gentleman that works there as a pharmacist who handles all of the Truvada stuff. So he'll do the paperwork for you, he'll do everything. He's fabulous, he really is great.
Do insurances help cover it?
Yes, yeah, so insurance will help cover it, but there is, each insurance policy, every single one has a formulary, and they determine how much they will cover of it and how much they won't. I'm hoping with the new drug Descovy, which is pretty much the same as Truvada, is that it's going to allow for a cheaper, people will be able to purchase it, yeah.
I'm curious about, legally speaking, I'm thinking HIPAA, a provider cannot inform the partners, known partners, or can the health department?
The health department will.
Will?
Yep, the health department will.
Okay.
They will ask who your partners are,
Okay.
or who your partners were, and they will contact them and say, you have potentially been exposed to HIV or whatever STI, they do all STIs.
How
Yeah.
do you feel about that?
I'm comfortable with that,
I
yeah.
think it's good. Yeah.
I'm okay with good old-fashioned quarantines. I'd like to see those come back, yeah. I'm okay with those, yeah. I mean, certainly, when you're looking at protecting the public's health, sometimes, wouldn't say rules change, but we flex them a little more. And of course, protecting the good, the whole of people, yeah.
So you're for forced vaccinations?
I'm okay with that. Forced vaccinations, maybe like a dart gun. And just kind of, if it was a blowgun, I'd probably inhale it. Yeah. So every 3 months, we ask for people to do a follow-up, and then they get a new prescription for that. Every 3 months, they'll be tested for HIV, and they'll also be tested for STIs. Okay, so this is who should receive it. If you have an HIV-positive sexual partner, an HIV-positive injecting partner, recent bacterial STI, if you have a high number of sexual partners, who was that? Wilt Chamberlain? How many did he say that he had? Thousands upon thousands? Do you remember that?
Magic Johnson?
No, I think Wilt Chamberlain, I think, said, is that what it was?
Yeah.
It was Will.
Well, yeah,
I don't
the
believe
people, yeah, I know. I'm like, wow, and you're alive. that didn't kill you, okay. But here's the other one, the inconsistent or no condom use. I was involved with a survey that was done at the drag show here on campus. I do have those slides, but I didn't bring them for today. The number of people that said that they use a condom every time. You want to guess a percent?
Oh,
Yeah.
4.
Oh, I mean, that's better than I expected.
I know. 4 is awful, but yeah, I'm with you on that one. I'm like, okay.
That's a start.
What can we do? How can we change that? So, here's the last thing that maybe you haven't seen this term before, chemsex. Have you seen that before? Chemsex is when individuals use drugs like methamphetamines or MDMA, like ecstasy, and some of the other medications. Okay. We do have, who shouldn't? If you're HIV positive, you can't take it. There's other medications. But this is a preventive tool. It is pretty tough on your kidneys to process it. So if you have a renal or kidney insufficiency, then there's other things that we can do. Okay. And if people aren't ready to adhere to a daily regimen, that's the other thing. We have to be sure that people will continue to use that. So just real quick, and what we say for individuals with PrEP, it is effective within 7 days. that will provide that. For anal sex, 20 days for vaginal sex. Guess what? We tell everyone 20 days. Look, how about 20 days? 20 days is good, so we use that instead, okay? Some abdominal pain, weight loss, headache, nausea, diarrhea. Over-the-counter medications work. You'll have them for about a month, and they improve upon that, okay? Okay, so here's the other thing. Illinois Medicaid now pays for PrEP. Yeah, so that's really exciting that they do cover that. And a lot of the insurance plans cover it too, but it depends. What I run into is people who don't want their parents to know that they're getting it, or they're going to use that. And if that's the case, I can make referrals for individuals for that. Okay. In fact, I had a student today that told me, oh, tiny print, everybody squint. But real quick, you can stop at any time, but you have to keep taking it to be effective.
Is PrEP a thing that Planned Parenthood
Yeah,
provides?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You can get a prescription through them, and they will also help to align you with resources to pay for it if you're unable to. Yeah. Gilead's been pretty good, and the manufacturer of this, and they're the manufacturer of the brand new one, Descovy, that's come out.
I got a project on Planned Parenthood, so. No.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Let me go back here real quick. All right. I want to be sure that that was the last slide. If I can get, okay, stop popping up. Take it, oh.
Just go to the top.
Ah.
All right.
No, I get determined. I can't let it go. It's like, you're going to work for me and you're going to like it. So you can find me, as you know, most of you know, 4305 in Clem. My number 581-6207 if you want to talk about HIV or other types of stuff. I have an espresso machine there. You've had an
Tasty.
espresso and it's delicious. Yeah, it's delicious. Yeah. Any questions?
I think we got them during the.
Yeah.
So is this something like everybody should be tested for?
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says yes, everyone in their lifetime should be tested for HIV.
Even if they're not sexually active or like partaking any like blood, like any drugs.
Risk.
Yeah, yeah. If they don't have those risk factors, the unprotected sex, receptive anal sex, that's another one. Injecting drugs. If you do not have those particular types of behaviors and you're not sexually active, then it would not be necessary for you to be tested. I still encourage it though. Yeah. Uh-huh. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is everybody depressed?
No, that was good.
Okay.
I like your presentations because you make me laugh during them, which makes me pay attention.
Okay, well, good, I think.
I think it's a good thing.
Okay, good.